Hello everyone, my name's Andy, the product trainer here at Vision 6 in Brisbane. Thanks for joining today's Vision 6 Power Session, Maximise Engagement Through Accessibility. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started there. Our Power Sessions are short and sharp, 20 minutes maximum, designed to let you learn something new and then get straight back on with your day. Now, if you're watching the live session, you can ask questions at any time during the session using the Q&A panel or the chat panel. Just pop your question in there as soon as you think of it, and then it'll queue up and I'll be able to go through those at the end and answer those for you. So email design and accessibility. Often as designers and marketers, we care about how an email looks. We make sure we've got the right font, we check the headings to make sure they're all nicely aligned and that they're bold, for example, and the colors are right in the images that we choose. But have you ever thought about how your email sounds? Now, digital accessibility comes into play when we look at if we can, or how we design content so that users with disabilities can still access and interact with that content. And it doesn't have to be emails. It can be videos, web pages, and other documentation and online marketing materials that we create. With accessibility, we have to make sure that everyone is able to engage with that content. So that's to ensure that we support those with color deficiencies and cognitive or visual impairments. And that makes sure everyone can engage with our brand, our message, and the content that we send out. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter what the platform is. It could be a video, it could be an email or a web page. But if we make that content accessible to everyone, then we're more likely to get better engagement through that. Now, when it comes to email design and accessibility in general, as you know, we're all busy people. This sounds like extra work. Does it really matter? I would say yes, it does, because there's an estimated 2.2 billion people who have a visual impairment, 36 million of which are considered blind. So some very large numbers there. Many of these people rely on screen reader software that they have installed on their phone or computer, which converts content such as text into audio. So it essentially reads out the message for them, be it an email message or a web page, so that they're able to still hear about all the content and things that you're talking about there. So colour blindness affects approximately 1 in every 12 men and 1 in every 200 women. And it's not just people who have a vision impairment. It's predicted that voice assistants, and by that I mean Siri on your iPhone or Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, that type of thing, they are predicted to be used by over 275 million people in the coming years. So, for example, people on the way to work who are getting emails read out to them by Siri or by Google, or myself, even when I'm in the kitchen at home cooking dinner, I get my Google Assistant to read out my emails to me. So if the email's not designed in a certain way, same as a web page or video with captions, that type of thing, it won't be read out properly. It won't make sense whatsoever. So this is not just about those with vision impairments, but also those who use voice assistants, which, as you know, is becoming more and more popular, especially with the devices being easier to use as well. So why is digital accessibility important? Well, the Australian government agencies are actually required to meet a certain level of accessibility guidelines known as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines there, WCAG, and they need to meet levels 2.0 AA. Now, the good news is that Vision 6 is compliant with that level, which is great. So if you're using Vision 6, you're okay. But there's a couple of things you'll still need to do to your email design to make the most of accessibility. Also, many large companies will actually have their own policy to ensure that content can be accessed by all. So for many companies and especially government agencies, it's not an optional thing. It's something that you must do with all of your content. And at the end of the day, if you make your emails accessible, then you're making them better for everyone, including those who have vision impairment and those who use screen readers or digital assistants to read out messages, web pages, and emails to them that way. Now, often us at the front line, who are the people designing and building these emails, this does add a little bit of extra work to your emails and things like that, just to add a couple of the little things. Of course, you'll get faster at it as you go through. They'll become second nature as we go through and design our emails a little bit differently, pop in a few extra bits and pieces to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. And we will jump into Vision 6 in a few moments to do some of these key things, so you can have a look and see how easy it actually is. But it's important to get buy-in from the rest of the business, particularly if someone else sort of manages your time in respect to divvying out tasks. Perhaps you work in a large marketing team or or you're using Agile and you've got sort of different tasks that you need to pick up each day, given that it does take a little bit of extra time to pop some of these things in, especially initially as you're getting used to what you need to do, it's important to make sure that others in the business, you get buy-in from those as well. So reasons to make the business case for accessibility. Ignoring it will just create frustrating experiences for those who are trying to engage with your content, and it excludes them from creating, or excludes you, sorry, from creating the long-lasting, valuable relationships with customers and prospects as well. It allows you to reach, of course, a much wider audience, which in turn will maximize your marketing ROI. So you're using tools like Vision 6 to be able to market to people, and why not try and maximize the return on investment for everything that you do from a marketing point of view. It also will ignore users with voice assistants, as I mentioned earlier. And the disabled population controls a significant disposable income as well. And all these statistics are from the litmus.com Ultimate Guide to Email Accessibility. It's a great guide or ebook you can download as well if you wanted to learn a bit more. There's information at the bottom of the screen there. Some industries are actually subject to accessibility legislation, so it's a requirement for them to follow certain guidelines. And 77% of brands surveyed out there are actually making accessibility a priority for the content that they're creating in the digital realm. So some good things to think about there, and some easy ways to sort of get buy-in from others within the organization to make it a priority for the content that you create, not just emails. So here are some things that you can think about from an email point of view. And we're going to do the first 6 that are outlined in orange there. We're going to pop into Vision 6 in a moment and actually set these up. So let's go through some of these. The first one is to use hierarchical headings to structure your content. So just like we would sort of skim read a web page by looking out for different headings of different sizes, the same is true for screen reader software. It too analyzes the content of an email by looking at the headings, whether it's set as a heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and so on. And it can then provide to the user an audible way to skim through the email. The user can request that their screen reader software just reads out the headings. Then the user can say, okay, stop, I would like you to read that section out for me. So by using these nice headings to structure your content, it makes it very easy for the user to go through and find bits they're looking for. Also, using alt text on all of your images. Of course, screen reader software can only read text, so if you have a lot of images in your email, the software will simply ignore and skip past those. So if you've got important information in images, such as a graph or other data, then it's always a good idea to use alt text on your images. And again, all these here we'll go through in a moment in Vision 6. The interesting one there, I've seen over the years a number of different emails, obviously, and quite a few of them, particularly not so much these days, but a number of years ago, I would often get marketing emails from different companies or online stores where the whole email was just one big picture. And it had, sale and pictures of the items that were on sale and text and that kind of thing. But it was all built into the one JPEG image. To someone with a screen reader, they would literally get nothing out of that because the screen reader software can't deal with just one big image. It has no idea what it is. So that percentage of your audience would instantly be ignored there. So good idea to not use just big images in your email, have text in there as well, so you're not excluding your audience. Another one there which we'll look at is left aligning your text. So you should always left align all of your email text. Headings accepted there. Never use justified text because it can be very difficult to read, and try not to use centered text. Of course, headings are accepted. So just an example here on the right-hand side. If you justify text, that's what it will look like. And if you left align text, you'll see that the left edge has a straight edge there. Each line starts at the same spot. Very easy to follow along. But on the right hand side there's an example of centered text. It has a ragged left edge. Each line starts at a different point. It gets very difficult to read and for people to find their place within the email and the part that they're reading. So left align text is recommended from accessibility guidelines at least. Ensure your email has a title set that will be read out in the screen reading software and voice assistants as well. Make sure your email has a plain text fallback version. Optimize the email line spacing to make sure the paragraphs aren't too joined together and make it difficult to read. Always keep sentences short if possible, so the meaning's concise. In other words, try to get sort of straight to the point of the sentences and that kind of thing. And if you are using any video content in your email, using the recently added video component that we have in Vision 6, it's also a good idea to make sure those videos have captions added in as well. So again, people can see what that's about on the screen if they you know, are hard of hearing or don't have headphones, for example. People on the train, that kind of thing. Not everyone has headphones and they still want to engage with content and learn and that type of thing. So captions make that easy. And consider the color contrast as well. Vision Australia has some great color guides and contrast guides as well. And at the end, I've got some links for you, which you can have a look at to go through the color contrast tools that Vision Australia has. A good example there is I've seen you know, web pages or emails that have lime green text on a light blue background. It can be very difficult to read. The contrast of those two colors is too similar. So the color contrast tool from Vision Australia would pick that up for you and tell you that you need to make some adjustments there. So a great little tool, and we'll have the links to that I'll show you shortly. So let's jump into Vision 6 now and implement some of the learnings, these 6 things we're going to run through. So I've just got Vision 6 open here. I'm in the messages section and I'm just going to open up an email here in the email editor. Now you'll see it's a fairly standard email. I've got a couple of images. I've got some items within the email, bit of text there. There's a few areas I can instantly see already that should be headings, but they aren't. So the email is just sort of looking a little bit difficult to sort of scan through. And someone, again, with screen reader software, it would literally just read everything out here on the page. It'd be very difficult for them to skim read this with the software and to be able to jump to a specific part, such as does it cost anything or what the person will learn. So we'll start with the first one on the list, which is to set an email title. That's done on the Design tab here. If we come down to the bottom, here's the View Online title. So this one could be Free Cooking Classes from XYZ Donuts. It's as simple as that to put in your email title. So that's a nice, quick, easy one. The second one was to left align text. So if we come in here and have a look, you'll notice that all the text is justified, which is this last option here. And you can see what it's doing in some of the areas. It sort of puts in extra gaps in the email design to try and stretch that across the page a bit more. Now, it's not that obvious in the Vision 6 email editor here that it is actually justified, but on some email clients, this would come back to this example here. You'll see that all the text will be spaced so that it kind of fills in a square or a rectangle, basically a block within your email. So my text is currently justified. Not as obvious here in the editor, but if you were to send this to some email clients, you would see it come out like that. All this text would be stretched all the way across. So I'm just going to simply highlight that and left align it. You'll see there was a minor change there in that. Also, wouldn't recommend centering it either as per the accessibility guidelines. It's very difficult to sort of follow this down, and each sort of sentence or line starts in a different place, so very difficult to read. So just aligning that to the left there. Another option is, another thing to think about is just setting the line spacing. And that's simply also done on the Design tab here. Come into line height and just set this to something maybe a little bit bigger. So 1.5 is what I tend to use. I find that some of the other ones are a little bit too spacious there. The default one can be quite small, so I normally sort of go 1.5 probably as sort of a nice amount of spacing. Gives the email sort of a bit of a nice clear area there, and it's a bit more easy to read. Stuff isn't sort of cluttered in as close. And you'll see here we're sort of keeping the sentences fairly short. After 1 or 2 sentences, putting a line break in to create a new paragraph. So it makes it very easy to read. And the screen reader software as well will be able to make use of that. The fourth thing on our list was to add alt text to images. How do we do that? Well, that's simply done when you highlight an image here, or when you pop an image into your email, and that image is there. You'll see we have an alt text field here. This is just in the settings panel that comes up whenever you click on different things. But in our case, if you're clicked onto an image, there's the alt text there. So this could be XYZ Donuts logo. This one here could be Recipe Club banner or image. You don't have to go to great detail because remember it will read out this alt text to the person who's using screen reader software. So this one could just be dividing line. And at the bottom, the same with the social icons. You could go into each one and say Instagram icon, Facebook icon, Twitter icon, LinkedIn icon, and so on. Now, if you've got images inside a text component like I do, they don't have that settings panel because I used this tool to put this button inside this little text area here. So all you do with those is when you double click on them, there's an option right here for the alt text. So this could be register button, for example. And the same with this one. So if you are inserting images with that little button instead, so images inside text, then just simply double click and here you've got the options for height and of course the all important alt text which we're looking at today. Excellent, looking good. So that's the first 4 things done. As you can see, I am explaining this as I go, obviously, but it's not really taking too much extra time. Things like the email design and line spacing, sorry, the email title and line spacing, very quick to set. Lining your text to the left, I mean, in most cases, the editor starts out left aligned anyway, so no changes there. Alt text on images, just that's probably an easy thing to go through and do maybe towards the end of your email, or even as you put each image in. You can pop in the alt text as you go along. The 5th thing from our list we should check from an accessibility point of view is the text version of the email. You'll see at the bottom here we've got a HTML version and a text version. It's one of those little known features that just sort of sits there at the bottom of the email. But if we click on this, you'll see that here is the text version of our email. And as standard, Vision 6 will just derive this from the text of your template. So it goes and gets the text from your HTML version and pops it in there for you automatically. But if you do specifically want to change this in some way, maybe get rid of these web links because they may not be relevant, for example, and everything else is probably actually going to be okay, then that's fine. You can make changes to the text version if you want to. If not, you can just get it to pull in the version from your actual template, which is fine as well. As you can see, all the text is still there that it picks up. And that again comes into play to that little note I mentioned earlier, that if your email is just one big image and doesn't contain any text, the text version will simply have absolutely nothing in it whatsoever. So again, those with screen readers, nothing will come up here at all, and they'll simply not be able to engage or read your email at all. And the last thing I've got on my list of 6 quick things that you might like to implement from an accessibility point of view to help you meet accessibility guidelines is just to use hierarchical headings. So you'll see here that because this would look good as a heading and it's sort of the introductory or lead-in article from our email, I might like to make that heading 1. What you'll learn, that could be heading as well. I won't make that heading 1 though, because I don't really want to have too many headings competing with each other. You should sort of structure them much like you would in a book or something like that, where the title is always the biggest font, and then you sort of have your chapters in the second font down, and then you've got your sub-chapters in your heading 3, for example. So structure them as you would in that essence. So the biggest things, the most important things, heading 1. Then as you go down throughout your email, you might do these as heading 2, for example. If you wanted to have a subheading underneath here, so does it cost anything, you could have one for the online version of the class with some information and the in-person class. Again, because these are subheadings of this, I would make these heading 3 because they're sort of sitting underneath that they're related to the section above. And by using the hierarchical structure, as in they follow a hierarchy, again, those with screen reader software will be able to easily have the software skim through headings. They would ask the software to read out the headings for them, and they would very easily be able to jump straight to the piece of information they're looking for. Much like when we skim read with our eyes, the software can audibly skim read as well and read out the headings to the user. So there are 6 quick changes we can do. Again, it's nothing too much out of the ordinary there. It's probably things that many of you would do already anyway, particularly with the text alignment and the headings and that type of thing. But I guess it's just to highlight the importance of some of these things to make sure that everyone is able to have a look at and engage with our content. Now for this screen, you might like to get your phone out and take a photo of this screen so that you've got all the links on you there. However, don't stress if you don't have your phone nearby. We will also send out all of these links in the follow-up email that we'll send out to you in a couple of hours with the recording of this session. We'll pop all of these links in there for you so you can easily follow them along. So the first one here is a fantastic resource from the Australian government. This is their accessibility and inclusivity, you know what that word is, inclusivity guide, my apologies, there. And that's a fantastic guide, very detailed, and that goes through everything from alt text to images to how you should structure headings, tables, bulleted lists, links, audio clips. It's a very, very comprehensive guide there from Services Australia and the Australian government there. Vision Australia has a good Colorblind helper tool, as well as a colour contrast determinator. That tool allows you to analyse an image, so you could do a screenshot of your email or something like that, and it will determine whether or not there's any issues with the contrast between elements of that email. And as I mentioned earlier, a great example of that is lime green text on a light blue background, or light grey text on a white background. Very difficult to read, and the colour contrast determinator tool would pick that up and tell you that you need to make some changes. The World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, which basically sets out the standards for the internet in general and web pages, so how web pages should be formatted, all that type of thing. They also have a web accessibility initiative and their own content guidelines, but you'll be pleased to know that the Australian Government Guide at the top follows most of those as well anyway, so you don't necessarily have to have two competing standards. This top one is the best one to look at. And as I said, Vision 6 is compliant with the Australian Government Accessibility Guidelines Level 2.0 AA. So that's the requirement that all government agencies in Australia need to meet. Vision 6 is compliant with that. And as I said, most large companies will also have a similar policy to do that. So that's also available there. And lastly, you can find some fantastic resources on Google, ebooks, audio guides, etc. if you just simply search for accessibility best practices for marketing. And you'll get guides and information there that covers more than just emails like I did today in today's short session. It covers a lot more in terms of all types of different marketing. So although it can take a little bit of extra time, especially initially as you sort of learn to remember to follow a couple of quick key things as per this slide here, but once you sort of get used to them and pop them into practice, it becomes very quickly second nature and becomes very easy to pop these into future email designs as you create them.